And now to talk about our module of the week, let's turn it over to Martin Anderson-Klutz, a senior solutions engineer at Acquia and a maintainer of a number of Drupal modules of his own. Martin, what do you have for us this week?
Thanks, Nick. Have you ever wanted to offer your content creators advanced capabilities like real-time collaboration? There's a module for that. It's called CKEditor 5 Premium Features, and it was created in September 2022 by Victor Volk, although recent releases are by Wojciech Kukowski, both of CK Source, the company behind CKEditor. Just a note that Victor was on this show on episode 372 for any listeners who want to go back and listen to that conversation. Now, the current version available is 1.2.5, which works with Drupal 9 and 10. It is actively maintained. In fact, that latest release was just in the past month. There is a user guide available, and the link is in the README file. And it has 16 issues open, 8 of which are bugs, against an official install count of 159 Drupal sites. Now, to me, the most compelling features enabled by this module are the ones that turn your Drupal WYSIWYG into a robust collaboration tool, similar to what users may be used to in tools like Google Docs or Office 365. Has a real-time inline comments and changes from multiple users. You can do things like track changes to suggest ways the content could be improved. It can show a history of changes made in the WYSIWYG independent of the saved Drupal revisions. And you can do things like tag users with @mentions to have them notified. There's also a productivity pack available to enhance your WYSIWYG. And again, some of these will be familiar to users that also use popular online collaboration tools. So you can have a document outline that uses headings within your content to create navigation for moving quickly within the overall content. It can generate a linked table of contents, which will automatically update as headings are added or changed. You can use / commands to execute actions, has enhanced pace from Office to preserve complex incoming content structures, but with clean HTML as the result, and a variety of other capabilities. Another premium feature is the ability to export to Word or PDF, and it also has a feature to restore full screen editing, which is something that CKEditor 4 had as part of the open source offering, but was dropped as part of the move to CKEditor 5. Finally, this module also includes an AI assistant that provides yet another interesting way to empower your content authors to leverage AI tools for their writing, including the ability to change the style, length, or tone of selected content using pre-made prompts or generate content with custom queries. It also works with a number of different models out of the box, so you're not restricted to ChatGPT. The module is open source, but using these premium free features does require a subscription from CK Source. The pricing will depend on the number of active users and which features you need. So if you'd like more information, you can use the contact form at ckeditor.com. It's also worth mentioning here that the team at Palantir has released a YouTube video of an open source collaborative editor that they're working on. They're calling Edit Together, which is based on the ProseMirror rich text editor framework. The blog where they announced that was released in July of last year, July 2023, and it mentions a mid-2024 release. So it'll be interesting to see as that gets closer how that starts to take shape. So let's talk about CKEditor 5 premium features.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of context maybe to share on the full screen bit that indeed didn't make it into CKEditor 5, into the core plugin that we are shipping with Drupal core. The reason that we don't have that is because it's not part of CKEditor 5 core, if you will. And they actually have a very good reason for that. CKEditor 4 was kind of like a more classical editor, in the sense that there is an iframe-esque thing with a UI around it. And they added the ability to do inline editing, in-place editing at a later time within a floating toolbar that some of you may remember. But CKEditor 5 is very different. CKEditor 5 is rewritten from the ground up, and it's intended to be kind of like a framework to build editing experiences with, kind of like Drupal in that sense. And so it doesn't have like a strong opinion on what that user interface looks like. And it is for that reason that they don't offer a full screen plugin out of the box, because like there's so many ways that you can build a UI on top of CKEditor that it didn't make sense to them to offer that out of the box or as an official plugin, so to say. And so that's why they wrote the necessary plugin for premium features so that it's available. It's actually, I think if I remember correctly, the only feature that is free if you install premium features. And so you can install it and just use that. And that works well for the UI that Drupal chose to adopt, which is kind of more the classical UI, because that fits well with the text area for typical body or long text fields that Drupal offers. So yeah, full screen. There is a little bit of history there. It's unfortunate that it's not out of the box and that it's not part of core, but it kind of makes sense. It isn't something that is going to be usable by every CKEditor 5 user.
And it's probably worth mentioning too that if the full screen is really the sole feature that you're really interested in here, there is a separate module called CKEditor 5 full screen that does only that. But yeah, there are options.
Sorry. So full screen editing, are we talking like borderless editing? Like, is that essentially what we mean? Because I mean, I don't usually use that in Google Docs. I'm just wondering, like, full screen, how does that present itself?
So at least my experience is it makes the WYSIWYG sort of take up the entire window so that it becomes more of like a a Word or Google Docs style experience.
Got it.
Yeah, you stop seeing the Drupal admin toolbar. You stop seeing any Drupal Chrome, UI Chrome, but you only see CKEditor. That's it.
Got it. So you get more editable area, basically. Interesting.
Yeah, massive.
So I mean, I think everybody would like more Google Docs like experiences when they're editing content, right? But it's and didn't hear us mention this, but so this module obviously on Drupal.org, but requires a subscription of sorts, or is it a one-time licensing fee in order to be able to use those fun collaborative features?
It does require a subscription for it. Sounds like everything except the full screen.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, if any of our listeners are using this, I'd be curious to know kind of about how much that is, because there's no information directly on the site. I might reach out on the forum and find out where that is, but I'd be curious how much that will cost, because I could definitely see that being really useful, especially in some intranets, like the ability to kind of just collaborate on content or make it. One of the things I'm curious about is, does it handle kind of that autosave feature as well that we had talked about a few weeks ago? Like, does somebody still have to hit the save button in the Drupal form to like permanently save the content, or because it's kind of real time, does it automatically get saved? Because that would be, how does that interact with other fields too? I'm curious how that works. That'd be interesting to know.
I'd be curious to know how versions work too, and revisions, not just autosave. Like,
right.
So you know, Google Docs, there's like automatically creating versions for you, and you can always go back and restore something. Like, I'd be curious to see how that works too.
Yep. I know that, or one of the reasons that it is a subscription is that it does require a server component that is not in JavaScript, not in a browser, not in Drupal. It's a separate thing that they're hosting to do the real-time syncing thing and resolving conflicts. I don't know the details of that necessarily, but so that kind of makes sense as an ongoing thing they have to keep running. So subscription kind of makes sense from that point of view. I would imagine that there is some kind of autosave, like there has to be some version stored in the server-side components that they operate, but it doesn't definitely not integrate with the Drupal revision functionality. It's independent of that, and it definitely also does not deal with other fields. It's only purely the CKEditor instance that's running that is made synced, nothing else. Actually, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so that's interesting. So that means that essentially you're not running that server component locally. So that means your content is like being beamed off to like some CKEditor server somewhere, right? So like there could be, depending on your use case or who you're implementing this for, right? There could be security implications there potentially.
100%,
maybe.
Yeah.
Yep. But I believe that they offer presumably at a higher price, the ability to run it on premises or locally. Like you can get your own instance, but so are ways around it, if I remember correctly. I see Martin nodding, and I think he just researched this, so I think that's correct then. But yeah,
Interesting.
there is a way around it, but it's going to cost more probably.
I suspect that they also do store the stuff locally. Otherwise, like, you'd be making a request every time somebody tried to load that page to view it. Never mind.
Right.
I,
So they're
and like,
only
how does
doing, like,
publishing
Or it's
work?
keystroke.
So-
Exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely
so-
going to be saved in Drupal, right? Otherwise, like,
Yeah.
what's the point of
Yeah.
using Drupal almost? Like, it's just like magically
Yeah.
syncing this field if you're looking at the same thing
Exactly.
at the same time.
So I think the way that collaboration works is as people are editing, it's doing that sort of sync off to the, remote server instance and keeping its own sort of like version history and, tracking changes and all those good things. But in terms of what's displayed, it's always directly from Drupal. So it's really only like once you hit save that it would actually update what would be displayed to the users.
Like, I see very specific use cases for this, right? So like I see like, hey, if you're on an intranet, right, and you want collaboration tools at your fingertips, but like in my like business administration brain, I'm like, guys, just use the Google Docs that we already pay for that's part of the G Suite and copy and paste that stuff into the website. Like, we don't necessarily need this on our website.
Well, there's things that
Oh.
Google Docs doesn't do and can't do.
Okay.
Google Docs. So this is very, like, I know a little bit about this because of the history of WYSIWYG editors in Drupal. Maybe you remember back in 2012, we were going to add Aloha editor to Drupal core, not CKEditor. That was changed at the last moment. And Aloha editor had one thing going really strongly for it. It was architected from the ground up with, I think, new algorithms that Google didn't have because Google Docs would not be able to resolve certain conflicts at the time. And CK Source has done similar work to make this possible because Google Docs, unlike other things, makes the entire document linear, whereas HTML is a tree, essentially. And you can modify things in the entire tree at any point in time. You can shift things around. And like Google Docs just cannot deal with some of these kinds of things. Google Docs, of course, also is limited to basic formatting, I would say. Like there's tables, but there's not arbitrary HTML markup and arbitrarily complex plugins. Whereas in CKEditor 5, you can create from the ground up very complex, very rich things that you can embed. You can go as crazy as you like with embedded things that are loading objects and data from elsewhere that are live displayed in the edit. Like, you can do crazy things if you like, or maybe not crazy necessarily, but like solving your use case, if it's appropriate. And then those more feature-rich components would actually sync live in real time with collaborative editing as well. So depending on your use case, Google Docs can be like cheap, yes. It would require a Google account, which some of us is a reason not to use it. But it's also limited. It's very good. I think we all use it probably very frequently.
Interesting.
But it's got different trade-offs essentially.
So like that's super interesting, Wim, because like now I'm thinking, okay, well, if I'm editing website content, like I'm not going to want to use Google Docs because of the things you just mentioned, right? But if I'm writing a blog post and it's like more document linear sort of like, flow, then maybe I would. So that's super interesting. I think like those use cases, like again, like as Martin likes to tell me, it depends, right? Like you're going to pick the use case that works best for you. And this is I think this is a pretty powerful addition.
Some people choose to do layout related things in a rich text editor in the body field. The body field becomes the majority of the page almost. And like if you start doing layout things, and imagine that works with real-time collaborative editing, that's something Google Docs definitely doesn't do. So powerful things are possible, but you have to put in the work to actually take advantage of it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Martin. As always, you had a wonderful module of the week that ties into the show. So if our listeners wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can reach me on all the Drupal and social channels as Manclue, but also happy to receive Module of the Week nominations in the Talking Drupal channel of Drupal Slack.
Awesome. Now on to our primary topic.
Actually, before we shift topics, I have a small addition to make for the CKEditor 5 Premium features. Sorry, I didn't know what the right time would be. I didn't realize you were going to jump to the next thing yet. I reached out to the CKEditor 5 people, and I asked, what do you have planned for CKEditor 5 Premium features? And apparently they do have a number of things that are going to be added in the next quarter. Something related to the case change plugin, which I think they announced publicly, but also something related to spelling and grammar checking. I don't know if that's going to be part of the premium offering, meaning paid. I think so. But then they are going to add a free-to-use, completely free-to-use counterpart called CKEditor 5 Plugin Pack. And that's going to add 5 to 10 plugins, and they plan to release that next quarter as well. So somewhere between April and June of 2024. Don't know the details. They're not sharing that yet, but they're planning to offer more additional functionality for free for the Drupal community to use.
I'll tell you,
Awesome.
spelling and punctuation and grammar I would pay for that, because if anybody's ever read anything I've written, they know I need help.